Hello and welcome back to the Lady Gardeners podcast. This week's guest is the wonderful Cassandra from Taw Valley Microgreens, and I got the pleasure of meeting Cass in real life at my garden at the Gardeners Co CIC next door to Arlington Court just last week, and she gave me some microgreens and some raw energy juice to take home. And she's such a bundle of energy and inspiration and passion, and I knew she was going to be fantastic for the podcast. So here she is, and she's going to be telling her story about how she transitioned from the corporate world, had a move halfway across the world, and how she's really been finding herself alongside growing her business. And she is just fascinating. So enjoy the episode. As always, this podcast is sponsored by the wonderful Feverfew Gardening Co, which if you haven't got a pair yet, then code LadyGardener15, get 15% off your first pair, and these will change your life. They are so fantastic. They're bramble proof, they're really nice and snug fitting. They've got a little clip so that you don't lose one glove at a time, like I have lost thousands of other pairs of gloves, and they look gorgeous. Rachel's business is really inspiring, and I have absolutely loved watching it grow over the past couple of years. And so please do go and support her, follow her on social media channels, buy her wonderful products, and keep invested in the journey. Now it's time for the episode. Happy growing, happy listening, and happy shopping. Good afternoon, Cassandra. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi there, Shannon. Good to see you again.
You too, and we actually got the pleasure of meeting in real life last week. I invited you into our beautiful little pocket of heaven, and we had so many good chats, so I'm extra excited to record the full podcast episode today.
Fab, and I am just delighted to be here to share the story that I have to share with you and your listeners, but I'm also really so blown away by what you're doing and how far you've come in such a short space of time. So yeah, well done. And I'm excited by what's still to come.
Thank you. Well, I really feel the boost of positivity radiating off everybody we've met in the past couple of weeks. And it's so wonderful to hear such positive words, because I feel like we're all kind of on a similar journey. And I'm really excited to share your story with everybody of kind of discovering that there's a bit more to life than corporate worlds and just trying to be in it to make your career. And so I think it's really magical to be able to explore the array of stories in different ways people have found their thing, or even found their thing and then decided that their thing is really a kind of parallel. So let's get started. And can you give us a bit of a potted career history of where you began and what you're doing now?
Sure, I can do that. Shannon, to be absolutely frank, I must admit up front that I am not a gardener. I'm not a natural gardener. I love nature, and I always have. I think growing up in Africa, South Africa specifically, and just having that wide open space around me probably planted the seed of where I am today. But I must just say up front that I am where I am today because of my very precious, very beautiful mother. One day I hope you will meet. But she has taught me everything I know in the last probably 4 years. And I guess, I wouldn't be where I am now chatting to you if it wasn't for her knowledge. And I'm just absolutely in awe of what she's done, because she has always grown things. She has always had a veggie patch, and we've always eaten from it. So it just was a very circuitous route that I took to get here. So I started out in, going to uni, going to college, actually, it was college in South Africa, to do a teaching diploma. And I then ended up in the corporate world because I kind of sucked at being in such a regimented, controlled environment and having to stick to such heavy procedures. So that was like the first inkling that there is a wild child inside that needs to be connected to something greater. And something perhaps more natural. And I found my way into the corporate world, which was, again, I was a complete fish out of water, but I I had to toe the line, and it was really such a good foundation for me to actually learn about discipline and, probably self-discipline and learning how to play the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very grateful for all those experiences and opportunities and furthering my self-development through working for BMW and specifically Mini. So I got an understanding of what niche marketing is, and it kind of led me to, well, it didn't lead me to, but alongside that was this yearning to connect to my soul, to connect to my true self, and to honor that. And I found that through yoga and meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And I became a yoga teacher. So that was like the first circuit that I had to go on. And it kind of took me 20 years to get to that point. So from there, it was, no, all I want to do is teach. I really feel that I need to be this teacher. I've got so much inside of me that I want to share and just impart, I guess. But I didn't have the experience, okay, because being in corporate is a very narrow track that we're on. And it wasn't aligning with my values. So I kind of segued into yoga. I opened up a yoga studio, and through my yoga, I kind of really connected to the natural world in a very big way. And I understood, or I gained understanding more of the polarities of life, the night and the day and the seasons, and all of what we are made of, which is basically stars. We're star children, running around on this beautiful planet. And I started seeing the earth as a garden. And through circumstances, I decided to change my life and give up life in South Africa. My son had grown up and he wasn't really as needy. He had his dad still in South Africa. I had exited a relationship, and I just felt that I needed to do something with the rest of my life that wasn't the same. And when my mom heard about my kind of dreams, she was going, no, Cass, if you're going to move to Cape Town, you're going to move to the UK. Come and join us here in the UK. You have got to spread your wings a little bit wider. It's time. So I landed up here in 2014, and I thought I'd continue teaching yoga. And it was a struggle. It was a huge struggle. I really wasn't making ends meet, and I was dipping into my savings at a rapid rate. And I decided to study sound healing. And then the pandemic came along. So just as I was getting going with that, everything kind of went into lockdown. And I had to think very fast and, kind of find another income stream. And I was speaking to my son one day and just going, I don't know where to turn. I don't know how to do this. And he just said, you know what? You've got the space, or my Boba Gran, as he calls her, has got the space. She has the knowledge. Why don't you try and grow microgreens? And I said, what are microgreens? And he said, don't you remember when I was studying and I was volunteering, I worked on a microgreen farm just outside of Cape Town? And I said, yeah, of course I do. And he said, Mum, they are amazing and you will love it. And I started doing the research. And that is kind of where I found myself, and it just exploded. And we ran with it. My mother, in the middle of winter of 2020, literally late December, just ordered seeds, and we got grow tables set up in her greenhouse, and we connected a cable from the main house to the greenhouse to heat the trays. And we grew our first crop in literally 3 weeks. And it was just astonishing and astounding and fantastic. And I think I started giving away to my yoga students in kind of late January, just to try, because I was blown away. And I thought, well, maybe I'm just delusional, I've got to get some kind of grounding here. And I started sharing them. And literally it started from that point. I'm not going to say it's exploded, because I still feel like I'm kind of in a capsule and there's so much still to come. But that, in a nutshell, is the circuitous route that I've taken to get to where I am today.
It's such an inspiring and fantastic story, and I think There's lots of points that I want to pick up and I won't have time to go through them all, but one, from COVID and such a challenging time for so many people, I really love to hear those stories where people kind of shone through and they found something special in that time where we were all just a bit unsure and we didn't really know what was going to happen. And so to hear that the business started from that is fantastic. But also, I think it's a really interesting point on that you didn't know what microgreens were. And I think a lot of people don't know what microgreens are. And we always go back to have you ever grown cress in an eggshell? Well, that's a microgreen. It's just that this is a fancier name for it and it opens the door to so many possibilities. And so for me, the more people that are championing microgreens and their nutritional value and their ease of growing and the kind of sustainability metrics that we can have from growing microgreens is fantastic. So I'm really excited that you're in our local area and that we can kind of pave the way together to get more people to know about what you can do with these microgreens. And I was really excited to see that you'd won your Taste of the Southwest award.
Yeah, it's just been such an amazing ride. I mean, from those dark days and watching how the lockdowns had impacted my family and then how they were impacting everybody and the fear that was kind of palpable, the uncertainty for what was happening to our future. And what I've taken away from that is that we're just kind of gliding on the surface of this earth. And change happens in an instant and we are not in control. So if we can do little bits to give us a sense of sovereignty or self-determination or the ability to empower ourselves. And I mean, there is nothing more basic than planting a seed and giving it a little bit of nourishment in the form of light and water, and then watching it grow and transform. That is such a magical power. And then, seeing it happen on a massive scale, although, I mean, I'm not even massive, but just, growing 40 trays a week and having these mini crops. I mean, it is the most soul satisfying little path to be on. But you asked me a question, there was a question woven into that, and I've gone off track, I think. So remind me.
I'm so into what you're saying. I don't remember what the question was.
Okay.
Okay. I think the next point for us to go to would definitely be for you to tell us about the space you grow in and kind of the scale you grow at, because I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, so I call what we're doing a micro business because it really is tiny. We started off, I felt like I was at school and I was learning the ropes and I was having to pay school fees. So I've made so many stupid mistakes along the way, but nothing critical. That's the thing. A mistake is just a mistake and it's a learning opportunity, right? But so starting off by growing non-organic seeds and then just finding that they just didn't grow and they were so prone to mold, and then going, well, is it me? What do I do? And then I tried the organic route. Okay, you pay more, but they seem to respond. There seems to be so much more energy there. I don't know what it is. And maybe it's because of the space that we have been healing. My parents bought this beautiful section of the Taw River Valley. It's tiny. It's literally 4 acres. Their house they bought 18 years ago, and then the land surrounding the house came up for sale. I think it was in 2014, and they ended up buying it within that year. So it all kind of happened at the same time that I landed here. And I remember my mum going on about the insect life and how vibrant it was come late spring, early summer, and how they couldn't walk through the meadow because they were, you were kind of literally swatting buzzing things away from your face. And that just filled me with so much glee. And I said to her, Mum, we've got a medicine meadow happening here. This is something really sacred and really special. And she was going, oh, Cass, yes, okay, let's just carry on planting and eating fresh greens. She's ever the practical one. And I'm like such a woo-woo little, I want to be a fairy, basically. I mean, I just really kind of connect to the elements. So this is what it is. They've basically left the land with minimal interference to heal. And I've been watching it every year, and the diversity is just mind-blowing. people would think, oh my God, all of a sudden you've got an over an abundance of what are those, I can't even think of them, dandelions, or nettles or whatever. But then the next year, something else comes up, and it's almost like nature knows whatever it is in those wildflowers. They're not weeds, they're wildflowers that will heal the soil. And the soil is so neglected. I mean, it is loam and clay, and I actually found some the other day, and it literally is the richest, most beautiful clay. You know, I was playing with it. I couldn't wait to get my hands like stuck into this amazing texture of the soil. But it's not great for growing things. So we had to, you know, when my son suggested this, everything kind of fell into place. We had an existing polytunnel that my mum had been battling to grow greens previous years, but the soil had become more and more depleted. So obviously that was the problem. We had a little greenhouse, and then down in the valley, literally 200 meters away, we had this very old wooden cabin that we converted into our office, come headquarters, come storeroom for all the seeds and everything. And that was a journey that was just incredible. I mean, I've never been into renovations. I am the least practical person that there is. I know how to change a light bulb, but that's it. I've now discovered that I'm actually quite good at demolition. So that's quite a good thing to get rid of inner anger and stuff.
Yes.
And it was such fun working with my mum doing that. But then we had to get a builder in to kind of rebuild it a little bit, refurbish it, and it's now a fully contained indoor grow space for my winter grow. And then I put up another polytunnel down there because that was really where we wanted it to be. I wanted it away from the house, and it kind of lends itself to be a hub where going forward, and we've started already, I've had a couple of grow your own or learn and lunch experiences. So people can actually come during a very limited period in summer or late spring. Because I'm so aware of the impact, the footprint on this beautiful land, you know, that is central to what is actually going on here. As much as I love the microgreens and as much as I want to feed myself, my friends, and the community around me with the most amazing, nutritious food, it is about letting nature find her way and her balance. And I think there seems to be a groundswell. I mean, I loved your podcast with Isabella Tree. I loved her movie, and I can't wait to get her book. So I put it on my Christmas wish list.
They've just both arrived with me this weekend. I obviously have read Wilding before, but I just got the book of Wilding and the children's version of the book of Wilding for the kids in sessions. So I'm really excited to get stuck into them and kind of see what we can do with our own projects.
Yeah, it is so inspiring to know that there are people who are on the same kind of wavelength. And yeah, I think when we open ourselves to these opportunities, that is really where the magic lies. And we find our tribe. Not that I'm into tribalism, really about inclusivity. I don't want to turn anyone away. I want everybody to start growing their own, you know, literally. And if it's microgreens, because you can do it in a small space. I mean, literally in the first year, we also grew some on our kitchen windowsill. So yeah, it can be done anywhere.
And we've been talking loads about the kind of power of community and finding your community. And certainly through what we've done with our not-for-profit gardening clubs is we've tried to show people a way that they can get growing, whether they've only got a windowsill, whether they can grow microgreens and mushrooms, whether they've only got a few pots or a little balcony where they could put some trays, or whether they've got a massive garden that they just don't know what to do with. And I think that there's such a movement for it, for people being more and more interested and curious and wanting to find new ways to do things as well. I think it's so fantastic to see people trying more slightly innovative things. So there are some of the slightly older generations on the allotments who maybe aren't quite as open to newer ways of growing and newer methods of growing. But actually, I think it's a really exciting time for us to, obviously we are in a time where soil depletion is a massive, massive problem, and we need to do things differently to protect our environment for the future generations. And so there really is a need for us to do things slightly differently. And we talk about all the time about how we don't really care how people get growing. And we don't even really care if people come away from our sessions and never grow anything again, but they come back to our garden. It's about getting people out into nature in whatever way you can capture their attention. And microgreens, we have definitely found, is one of the best ways, because you've got a quick reward within just a couple of weeks that you're getting your first harvest. The success rates are really high as long as you've got the right seeds, like you say, with using organic seeds. And it's such a thrill. Like, I remember growing my first few pots of microgreens and just being so blown away by the fact that day by day you can watch that progress. It's on your windowsill. It needs very little care. Yet at the end you have such a delicious, fantastic, nutritious crop that you can just grow again and again and again. And although you can make it a very expensive endeavour, there's lots of ways that you can make it a less expensive endeavour. And actually, I wanted to tell you a funny story. I was going to message you, and then I was like, oh, I'll wait for the podcast. The day after I saw you, I came home, and we don't have a kitchen because we're currently in a house renovation, so that we cook on a camping stove, and the cupboards are pretty much bare, like we kind of buy for the meals we need for the week. And there was nothing in our house bar your little pots of green juice and the tub of microgreens. And as I was rummaging through the cupboards, I was like, what can I eat? Like, I don't have time to go to the shops, I just need something for lunch. And I found a pack of like pasta and sauce, like cheese and broccoli, and I was like, right, I'm just gonna have to go with the pasta. But I absolutely covered it in radish microgreens, and it was so delicious, like adding the textures and knowing that despite the fact that the actual meal was probably null of all nutrition, I could still just sprinkle it on top of something a bit extra, and it made it like a gourmet experience that I'd cooked up in just a couple of minutes.
I'm so happy to hear this. I mean, what a difference it makes. And it is literally that simple. You can transform any meal into a gourmet experience if you want to. And there's nothing better than actually growing your own and doing that as well. But I appreciate that not everybody has the time. And this is the other thing about setting yourself up with a little mini grow at home, is that it's something that you can dip in and out of. You know, you don't have to do it consistently all the time. But when you commit to growing a tray, it does require your care and your attention. And it is almost like a really good way of instilling some discipline, you know, to show up and just get into a routine and just know that for the next kind of 10 days, you're going to be committed to nurturing these baby greens. And then the reward is there, just, you know, one little scissor snip away. And you're going to be eating the most delicious, most nutritional food on the planet, literally. And you touched on something about our sense of security and our need to probably change our behavior and our shopping and, you know, the ways we are consuming things. So again, I mean, it's really good that we live in a world that is so convenient and we have all these conveniences, but there does need to be balance. And, you know, the population is exploding still, and we're at that tipping point. I mean, everyone's talking about it, or all the experts are talking about it, okay? Climate change is here, and we're on the edge of, you know, a precipice if we don't stop doing what we're doing, expecting a different result. And yeah, I kind of get the doom and gloom, but I also felt right in the beginning that we need to be the change. It really does start with each one of us, you know, and little ones are already there. They are the change. They are actually naturally, organically saying no to certain things. And I think we as adults need to give them space. We need to start listening to them. And it's, you know, I'm listening to the little microgreens as well. And I'm looking at nature around me. And this is where it gets so interesting, because I know that what I'm doing is potentially intensive farming. And it's, you know, that is not something that I'm comfortable with, okay? I could grow this, and I could grow warehouses full, you know, rugby field sizes, and make millions from this if I want to. And there is a part of me that does want to do that, okay? But there is this consciousness that goes, when you do that, nature's going to match you. And time again, I have had to deal with this specifically over the last 3 years when I've been experimenting and perfecting what I'm doing. And first it was the mice, and they were relentless. All they wanted to do was get to my sunflower seeds that had literally just germinated. And I looked at this and I thought, well, there's a reason why they're going for that. It's early spring, and all they want is that oil to kind of fuel them to get through the coldest part of the year. And that's what their instincts were saying they had to get to. And I'm not a vegan, but I do uphold to the principles and the values of veganism. I do think that, a plant-based diet is the way to go. I don't like the processed plant stuff that's coming onto the market.
Yeah.
I'm all for eating naturally and with as little processing as possible. But I'm watching nature all the time. So first it was the mice. And it's taken me 3 years to discover that peppermints, mint, and peppermint oil are the greatest mice deterrents. So yeah, I've had to kill a couple of mice along the way, and I'm desperately sad that I had to do that. But there was a bigger reason why I was doing this. So again, I had to balance this, okay? So many big lessons. I'm sorry I'm rambling on, but this is a really critical, important point for me to make. Next came the squirrels. In fact, it was this year that the squirrels discovered that there was a food source, a ready food source for their babies. And they literally tore through 13 of my plastic trays, and I was tearing my hair out going, okay, well, am I now at the point where I actually can't go on any longer? I've got to move, I've got to leave this land, and I've got to get into an industrial unit, or I've got to get a container on my land that is sealable, completely sealable, because they were literally gnawing through the wood of my wooden surround on my little door, my cottage pane door that I fitted to the stable, which is now my grow room. And then the next minute, there are no more squirrels. And I'm thinking, okay, well, what the hell's actually happened? And a couple of months later, like literally 6 weeks later, along comes this buzzard, a junior buzzard, and it's on our front lawn. And I'm going, well, this is weird. I didn't know at that time that it was a junior. I actually had to reach out and speak to some experts, and I was all for getting it rescued. And then they kind of said to me, Cass, there's avian flu, and we don't really want to come and get involved. I think we need nature to take its course here. And that's exactly what we did, because that's kind of my fundamental, right? Nature needs space, so get out of its way. And this was literally 3.5 weeks ago. So it's still really close to my heart. And I didn't realize how much I would fall in love with this bird over such a short period of time. And in fact, we were all moved. I live with my mom and her husband, and my partner is in and out all the time. So, this bird became part and parcel of my family, although we didn't tame it, okay? We found out that it was a baby and it needed some extra nutrition and support. And I called on a lovely raw food, pet food supplier at Ven Valley Vineyard called Shop Raw, Lou, who I've been speaking about, to supply her with microgreens for guinea pigs and for baby mice, or for mice that people are raising. Yeah, I want to get into that side, and she's really excited about that. So that's another little, let's park it for now. Getting back to Birdie, and I got him the best meat possible, and I would leave it out for him, and he wasn't flying, he was kind of hopping around, and he looked really sad and really kind of lonesome in that horrible rain that we had at the beginning of last week. But he survived, and every day I would go down to my facility in the valley, the little grow HQ, and he would be around, and I was going, oh my God, it's so good to see you, you're still here. And then I saw that he would kind of hop up a higher perch, and I was feeding him up higher. We've got this big old hay bale from one of the events that I had here, and the hay's under tarpaulin. So I would put his meat up there, and he would manage to get up there. And then I was just standing looking out the window, and this is an amazing window on the world. And he was sitting on my wheelbarrow, like as you do if you're a buzzard. right? And the next minute he took flight, and it was like, oh my gosh, he knew that he waited for me to come down so that I would see him taking his first flight. And it was like such a moment. It was just the most beautiful moment. But what I'm kind of getting at is that this family of buzzards, and I don't know what's happened to his mom and his dad, but I think that one of the big trees must have come down where they were nesting, or maybe the branch where the nest was on. And he's potentially the only chick that survived. But I have no idea what the backstory or what his story is. I'm just trusting that this is how it unfolds. And those squirrels, they went into producing him. You know, his parents were eating those squirrels and were trying to get into my microgreens. Oh my goodness, nature can be so cruel, but it is practical. So yeah, that's my birdie story. And
I think it's such a beautiful story, and very much along the kind of lines of Isabella Tree's Wilding, is you kind of have to let nature do its thing, and when you see problems arising, there is a natural solution, and it's all about kind of like the balances don't stay at a constant. It's like with things like slugs and aphids, they tip the scales at different times of the year, and it's about us finding ways for us to not eradicate them completely, but to live with nature and kind of work with nature to find that balance. And I think that another one of our really fundamental things that we say to a lot of people is you actually don't learn anything when you're successful, because you don't often sit down and go, oh, why was that a success? Whereas when something goes wrong, and what we call the failures, you really kind of want to dive deep and you want to understand what happened, and you know what went wrong a lot of the time. And so it really is important to have those challenges. And although you can take it as such a big knockback, I can't even count the amount of times we've had massive knockbacks, and you just feel so disheartened and you really feel like there's no way forward. And then you come up with a creative solution at the end of it, and you feel completely reinvigorated and ready to like battle the world again. So I think gardening, really, that's the core thing it teaches us, is patience and perseverance in finding a solution.
Absolutely. And, you know, nature knows, and we just have to be quiet and look and listen. It's all there, you know. It's just, yeah, it is a privilege to be here and to be doing this. And I mean, I get that future food security is a very real need that needs to be addressed, and people are going to start hearing about this more and more. Our water at the moment seems to be central. You know, we don't have enough fresh water. And growing in this way minimizes the use of what fresh water we have. Our resources to grow microgreens are much lower. And I think if you're in an urban environment and you're growing microgreens, then there's a heavy reliance on mains power. But I've been in an incredible position that very early on in our journey, we came to the attention of Devon trading standards, and we were approached by researchers from the Plymouth University who said that there's funding available for innovative farming, and you're in our sites and we'd like to help you. So what do you need, Cass? What innovation products would help you now? And I mean, my mind literally exploded with this, because I was going, oh my God, what do I need? And then looking at where we were, we've got no power. You know, so here they are talking, oh, well, we've got these great inventions and we've got sensors and robotics and automated systems. None of that's going to work for us because we don't have power. So the very first thing that came to mind was, well, solar panels would be a great thing. And we've managed to get that. So our cost of production, it's still high. You know, there are so many things that go into running a business and getting it done right. So that's always going to be a challenge. But if people can see that there is this route to market and it is a sustainable way of consuming, that's really important. And I think like there are growers around the country, so many vegetable market gardens, so many big farms, all doing what they can to feed this population that is ever growing. We need more, and I know I'm trying to run a business, and I know that I'm going to be successful at running this business because, my heart is aligned, and I do have expectations of the standard of living that I want, but I know that there's room for more, and people need to hear these words and they need to get growing. So if it means that I'm going to be more consulting, that's great. I want people to learn how they can do it and potentially learn from what I've done, the mistakes I've made, so that they don't make them again. But it's not for everyone. I mean, there are so many billions of people on this planet, and if you can just change your shopping experience to supporting a small local producer who is doing something to make a difference, that is also enough.
It's all about scale, and I think that comes from a consumer level right the way through to a growing level, in that we don't live in a world that's set up for a perfect environment. You can't just go down to the shop and pick up a bunch of produce that's environmentally consciously produced, that's plastic free, that ticks all of the boxes that you would possibly need. And you can't grow in the perfect way because we still need plastic trays, because actually the paper trays go mouldy and they degrade. Like, there's lots of different things that we have to do and make compromises on to be able to push our businesses forward. But it's all about finding out where your place sits, finding out what's going to work for you in your economic situation, in the amount of time you have, in the space you have, and then working out your kind of own battles and how to overcome them, but with the support of everyone around you. And for me, it's really about the more that people get growing, the more we kind of support one another. It's less about competing against each other, but actually bringing each other up. I was saying earlier about another growing project that we just met at the weekend, and they've come out to our space and attended a workshop, and we're going to go out to their space. And we're running something very similar and potentially could be taking people away from each other. But that's not the case. It's that we need the awareness to be there, and we can learn from each other. And the more success each of us have, the more success that is shared around the wider community.
Exactly. And I think that we're probably in a really deprived area if you look at the whole of the UK. And that didn't sit well with me when I heard those words. It's not necessary. I mean, this is a developed country. And I think that people need to know how amazing they are. And if it starts with being able to grow just one little plant or one little seed, and then exploring from there onwards, or just changing one behavior, knowing that you're doing this for the greater good of all, not just for yourself, success comes, and it's not just necessarily a financial thing. It really is a happiness thing, and that sense of belonging. And when you've got in touch with nature, it seems to be that you feel a deeper sense of security. So for me, that was one of the greatest things or the gifts that I've received from this journey the last 3 years. And also seeing how it's helped my mum, who had kind of not had a purpose for a while. And we all need purpose. If there's one thing that we need, it's purpose in order to feel content and joy. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And actually, a really interesting question that people often ask me, and I never have the answer. I say the right answer for, there is no such thing as the right answer. But an interesting question to ask is, what does success look like to you? Is success a monetary figure? Is it a number of products on the shelf? Is it a feeling that you get when you do a particular thing? What is success to you?
So I think if you're asking me a question, I'm going to say that it's a combination of all those things. I really kind of want to avoid limiting myself and having to be in a little confined space. I want to expand into what is possible in this moment. And If that is waking up and I'm smiling, that is successful. That's a great start to my day, you know, and it can only get better. So, yeah, I mean, I'm very aware that, you know, poverty exists, and coming from South Africa, I've seen it. I've traveled extensively in India. I've seen what poverty looks like, and I just think that in this day and age, that shouldn't be a reality to the extent that it is. You know, I mean, not everyone has to be a millionaire, but everyone deserves shoes on their feet, a roof over their head, and some lovely fresh food. And, you know, that kind of comes to me in the form of, yeah, I would love this to be really neat and tidy, but it's not going to be that. And chasing a net zero goal and supporting or buying products for packaging that are 100% plastic free or whatever, I have to be aware of the cost involved, you know, for the average person who might be battling with a budget that doesn't seem to last the month. But there again, if you can afford to, I have a range of packaging that will slot into you as well, you know. And as much as I want it to be totally sustainable and clean, it comes from Sri Lanka, but it's sustainably sourced little cardboard tubs that are made from palm fronds. They are beautiful. I shared one with you, and they're completely compostable. So my challenge to you is don't throw it out. Please put it in your compost and let's see what happens. You know, when you come to use that compost, I'd love to, because I'm doing some of that, but I mean, I don't really use my containers. So all I can say is just give them back to me, post them back to me if you want to, you know, but there again, that's not also sustainable, you know.
Which is exactly the point. So there's so many different ways that you can see success and see positive things happening, and sometimes the positive things come out of the negatives. At the beginning, when people ask me what success looked like, I'd be like, we're making X amount of money per year, we're reaching X amount of people, and it was very, I come from a corporate background also, so it was very kind of like KPI driven. Whereas now, actually, what does success look like for a session? Well, it doesn't matter who turns up and how many people are there. It's that they have got a greater sense of confidence at the end of the session, that they leave with a smile on their face. They feel like they've been valued and listened to, that they've made connections within the community. And obviously, the thing that I need is for it to make money and for it to be successful. But actually, if those sessions are that joyful, that it's ticking all of those boxes, they're going to go away and they're going to tell their friends, and success in a monetary sense will come later down the line.
Yeah. And then also, you know, the regenerative farming principles. I mean, yes, we use plastic trays that literally have a limitless lifespan unless squirrels attack them. But all our waste is really good quality organic compost and sterilized grit. And the root systems that have forged their way in there are just remarkable, you know. So once I've harvested, I've really looked at them and I've thought, well, what can I do with this? Is there a way that I can make body scrubs or something from that beautiful texture? I'm not talking about the compost. I'm talking about the actual root system. So I've scrapped that idea, but I've given it to the earth. I mean, literally, I have allowed the waste that we produce to feed the soil, and it's all around our little wetland, which, when I look at the lay of the land, was a natural flood defense system long ago, before they built the stable and concreted a 250 square meter patch that sits right on top of this wetland. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. But I mean, I can see it with eyes today that now understand the need to build flood defense systems, because we've kind of tarmacked over so much of the land that was once potentially a drainage system. So this is a microcosm of that. And restoring that is now my main focus, with as little intervention as I can. But I have a dream, and that is to ultimately one day have a body of water that will support a different diversity of animals, invertebrates, whatever it is that wants to make their home there. But for now, it's just a wetland, and it's slowly coming back to its diverse natural state. Whereas when I first moved down to that cabin, the stables, it was just covered with irises.
Oh, wow.
That were just like blocking out every other form of plant growth. And now it really is beautiful. We're seeing so much more. But just getting back to the regeneration aspect, so we're really trying to reuse that compost, and I've started another little side, which is so exciting, and that will hopefully come to fruition in spring next year. But we're hoping to have our first crop of them for Halloween or for Christmas, depending. But that's wild strawberries, alpine strawberries, which are not the big ones that you see that are grown probably hydroponically or, in big polytunnels. These are tiny little, really super flavorful strawberries, and the couple that I've tasted already are the flavors just next level. It's so exciting. They're not as sweet as the big ones, but sometimes those big ones can also be very watery. So this is more of an intense kind of little taste explosion.
How exciting.
That's where all our compost has gone. For the last 2 years, I've been having this amazing, like 2 of my bins are now full, and we're down to the last third in the second bin. So yeah, I've got about 100 baby strawberry plants busy flowering in our top polytunnel, and it's really exciting.
And I think that that's another thing to take inspiration from, is the way that you have innovated from the solar panels through to products. And I can't finish the episode without us talking about your raw energy juice, because
oh my goodness,
when I saw you, I hadn't yet tried it, and now I think I've had it for as like a morning drink for like 4 days in a row now. And I was telling you when you visited that I had tried a powdered version of these greens juices, which I ordered, absolutely roped in by the marketing and the fancy cup that came along with it. And as soon as it arrived, my immediate thought was, where were the crops grown? What is the nutrition value of those crops? Because if they're just ones from the supermarket, they're probably very nutrition depleted, and actually it's probably not doing as much good for me as the marketing would lead me to believe. Then I put it in a cup and tried it. It's meant to be like peach flavour, and it is disgusting. It makes me want to be sick, and you have to drink it through a straw so that you don't actually taste it. It's that horrendous. So do not recommend, won't slate the brands. But so my experience of that as a greens juice was horrendous. And then you gave me your little bottle of greens juice, and honestly, a whole nother level. It's delicious. It feels really refreshing. And I actually found it quite moreish. So it gets great reviews.
I'm so happy to hear this. Thank you, Shannon. You know, it's been a labor of love for the last kind of 11 months. And when you're so involved and you're so invested, I sometimes feel, this is me personally, I should speak from me, I feel that perhaps I'm missing the essence, and the taste is maybe not as good as what I'm hoping it's going to be. I kind of think that there might be a filter that's delusional inside me. And yeah, I've had to tweak it. I've used other people, obviously, along the way, primarily my family, and some of them go, oh my God, no, that is just so wrong. Some go, hell, Cass, this is actually quite nice. And then others go, well, it's drinkable, you know. And then I go, okay, well, what if I do it like this? And all right, so let's kind of just park the fact that maybe I do I need to keep it pure, but maybe bringing a little bit of green apple in is not such a bad thing. You know, we grow beautiful brandy apples in this area. We grow other varieties of apples. So let's not be so strung up about having something so pure, and let's just be real and raw. So Taw Raw is what it is. It's cold pressed and it's obviously lovingly cultivated. I've been a big wheatgrass fan. I suppose for the last 6 or 7 years, but again, you know, trying to find the powder that really worked for me was super difficult. And ultimately you just had to mix it with a banana in a smoothie just to get it down with loads of honey or maple syrup or something, you know. And I understand that potentially sugar in my diet is not helping my inflammatory conditions. So, you know, I do suffer from chronic pain, and I've really had to look at ways of managing this pain so that I'm not completely reliant on pain meds or painkillers. So turning to green juice is a way of alkalining my system, and it's a way of cooling my system, which I think kind of counters the inflammation that rises. But a little bit of apple is not going to harm it. And sometimes it's probably pineapple. I use the core of pineapples primarily, and some of the skins, which would just generally go to waste or go into our compost. But there's so much goodness in them. And just, you know, just experimenting. And finally, I think the last sort of 2 months, I've got to this recipe. So hearing what you're saying about how delicious it was makes me feel amazing. So thank you so much.
Not that my bar for it was low, but I think in comparison to the powders, I was still expecting it to not be like delicious, like not something you're going to want to drink, but something that you're going to drink because you know it's good for you. Which, as you described the process of creating it, sounds like there were iterations where you knew it was good for you and you drink it, but it maybe wasn't. But I think it's delicious.
Thank you, Shannon. And I mean, the other thing is that, you know, getting the color right. I mean, when my son saw it, saying, Mum, no one's going to want to buy that because it looks hideous. And I'm going, well, there's not much I can do about it unless I put a lot more apple and celery in. And, you know, I want to be light on the apple. I want to be light on the sugar because I know that other people feel like I do about sugar. But you know, tweaking it and making it so that there is more celery perhaps than wheatgrass isn't also a bad thing, you know, because there's so much goodness in celery. And if I'm okay with buying organic celery to put in there, I mix it with filtered water. One day I would love to say that we've got our own well producing amazing clean water, which hopefully will happen sometime. We have got a well, we have got a spring on the property. But at the moment, my efforts are just on perfecting a product and then going and getting it tested and nutritionally verified. And, you know, I mean, I can talk all day long about how I feel the difference physically when I have it and when I don't have it. And it literally is an energy upgrade, an instant energy boost. And I know how powerful it is as an immune booster. So yeah, touch wood, I will be able to produce a lot more, and I'll keep you supplied and a lot more people as well in the coming months over winter.
Well, we're very lucky in our local area to have such a fantastic supplier. And before we finish up, I really wanted to, I know we talked about it briefly before, but hear a bit more about some of the other plans you have for the space in terms of where do you see the future vision?
Well, okay.
Sorry, that's a big question to put you on the spot with.
Yeah, no, it is. It's fine though, because I mean, obviously that's something that I think about all the time. You know, where am I going with what I'm doing? And how do I want it to look in 5 years' time? I think it comes back to just being so grateful for what I have had to develop, what I have done, and understanding that what I've been able to create, I can model and take anywhere. which for me is quite important because I am a little bit of a gypsy, okay? I have given up a life in South Africa. I went to 13 different schools. So I'm used to being on the move, and to have put down roots in Devon for the last 10 years, I really feel like I've landed, and I don't really want to go anywhere. But I feel that maybe the business will need to move, and there is scope to go more industrial, potentially, to move to bigger markets, because let's face it, North Devon is North Devon, and it's one of the lowest populated areas in the country, and I love it, and that's why I'm here. So that is an option, but I do feel that Taw Valley, my little hub here, is going to be the incubator, and it will be the training center, and I will love to explore ways of running courses, hopefully one day running retreats, kind of come and grow with me. Come and heal your lives right here when you've burned out of corporate, which I think more and more people, potentially are going to experience. I think that is a rite of passage. And I think we need places like what you're establishing and like what I'm doing as a healing modality, just to find that balance again. So yeah, watch the space we can create, hey? We can play.
It's going to be fantastic. When you just meet people and you like, I really feel like our visions align in parallel ways, in terms of we're not doing the exact same thing, but we're both kind of working towards the same goal. And so I'm really excited to have met you and to keep in touch and see what's to come.
Thank you so much, Shannon. I feel the same. I really do. And I'm trusting that a lot of people who listen to this are also going to feel the same, and they're going to get in touch. So yeah, follow us on socials. At the Lady Gardener, what is your social media?
I'm Diary of a Lady Gardener, and then we're at the Gardeners Co CIC is our Instagram as well. But please do share where people can purchase your products, where people can find you on social media, the name of your business. I know we've mentioned it a few times, but just so people know before they go.
Okay, it's Taw Valley Microgreens Limited. We have a website, www.tawvalleymicrogreens.uk. Not co.uk, just UK. I'm on social media at Taw Valley Microgreens, Instagram, Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn, Cassandra Collins. I also have a Cassandra Collins Facebook page that's open and a little bit more woo-woo. That's it, really.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure, a real pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.